Hey everybody, welcome back to HPC Tech Shorts, where every week we bring you an interesting topic from the world of the technologists who are making the cloud the best place to run your HPC workloads. This week, really excited to have Tara from RONIN joining us. Hey Tara.
Hi.
Tara's a principal research scientist in RONIN.cloud, and if you've never heard of RONIN before, it's one of the best tools for doing research in the cloud that you need to know about. So way back at the beginning of my journey in the cloud, customers used to berate me about the fact that we needed to have governance and guardrails tools in the cloud so that researchers could comfortably jump into the cloud, do their work, and be confident that their budgets were not going to get obliterated by leaving a cluster or some other research workload turned on, which was gobbling away their resources while they were sleeping and not knowing about it. The very best implementation that I've ever seen of those governance and guardrails is RONIN. So we've got Tara here today to tell us about RONIN Isolate, which builds on that background that RONIN has created. So I think, Tara, why don't we start off with a description of what RONIN is, like a very quick Cook's tour of RONIN, so that people understand everybody's got sort of the same base level of where we're going from. Can you explain RONIN in like a minute or two?
Yeah, absolutely. And Boof, I think you hit on it exactly right. The idea is to provide researchers the flexibility to create the machines that they want to create the clusters, the storage that they need to do everything that they want to do, installing software, running their applications, but to do so in a way that doesn't get them in trouble in terms of exceeding their budgets, but also I'll talk about today in terms of violating compliance and security rules that the corporation, that the institution wants to set up for them, because that's a really important problem these days, keeping data secure and allowing researchers the flexibility to actually get their work done.
Yeah, and I know that the IT departments of most universities are in pharmaceutical research groups. They've got their idea of what security should be. And one of the nice things is RONIN can actually implement those security rules for them. So at least they know that when their researchers are running wild in this cloud, doing stuff, creating really cool ideas, they know that it's done safely. All right, so give us a demo, take us for a tour of RONIN quickly so people understand what we're talking about.
Sure, I'll just show you really quickly what the idea is here. So what RONIN does is provide a project-based abstraction. You have different projects. I'll just drill down on one. This is, for example, what a neuroimaging lab might look like. And the first thing you see is that the budget is front and center here. And so researchers have the flexibility to do whatever they need to do within their budget. And there's many tools within RONIN to help you manage that, monitor that, know what the spend is. But the flexibility that you have is you can create a new machine or a new cluster with the simplicity of filling out a shopping cart. So this is what it looks like, for example, to create a new machine. You pick your operating system, or if you're a researcher, you probably have a lot of packages that you use custom for your research flow. You could put that on a prepackaged configuration and go. You give it an address, and it's a human readable address. We'll do all the networking for you, so you don't need to know any CIDR blocks or IP ranges, anything of that sort. You have the full range of the power of AWS to create a machine, for example, anything that you want that's available. You could select just something very small or something very big, add storage if you need, but then you're ready to go, and that launch button shows you that you can do that. And I'll just point out this is because it's HPC Tech Shorts, the very same thing for clusters, which is I think kind of amazing that it's as
This is
easy
one
to
of the
create
things
a
that I love
cluster.
the most. This is one of the things that I love the most. The ability to spin up an HPC cluster in like a few minutes.
It's just that quick, and the decisions are exactly the same, except for you've got a choice of scheduler as well, and your head nodes and compute nodes, but everything is helped managed for you. You've got access to spot pricing, the Intel tools, and a forecast for what things will cost.
Wow. That's going to give you a forecast of what things are likely to cost you.
Yes.
And you can put some wrappers around that as well, right? You can put some turn my cluster off at night while I'm
Yes, you
while
can.
I'm not here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because unlike on-prem, when you have a machine, you can leave it running overnight, but you don't want to be doing that as a researcher because that could be, spending money that you're not using, essentially.
Tell me about Isolate.
Switch to an architectural diagram of that, if you like.
Yeah.
First of all, one thing I wanted, so Isolate is builds upon RONIN Core, which is the core product, and the experience of it is the same. That's the amazing thing, is that researchers don't even really know that they're working in a secure environment, because that's not something they care about typically. They care about being able to get about their business. So one of the key things about this that I need to point out right away is that both RONIN Core and RONIN Isolate have the consistency of working within one AWS account. So when I show here, if I highlight this box here, essentially, this is a single AWS account that serves multiple researchers. Now, this is key to the design, because what that means is that, unlike a situation where researchers have their own AWS accounts and guardrails put in place on those different accounts, RONIN is able to maintain a much higher level of consistency of what happens, and thus able to log every single action that is taken in the UI, so that you have a complete audit trail of everything that happens within the system, down to from the push buttons down to accesses to object storage, for example. And that would be incredibly difficult to do in any sort of other environment. You have to have that control, because there's so much power in AWS. So for example, if you think about even something as simple as S3 bucket policies, you could set 200 reasonable policies that are correct for your security profile. And then one error can undo all of that. So having this oversight and visibility and consistency within a single account gives you a control that would be impossible to do otherwise. And
And, and
that's
this is
key. Mhm.
and this is really necessary. Like, if you want to be able to implement something like HIPAA is not something that you can just get a checkbox next to that a
No.
product is HIPAA compliant. HIPAA is
Yep.
about processes and procedures and audit trails and so forth. And this
Yep.
is stepping you towards that goal, right?
And people have more requirements than just HIPAA too. There's corporate security policies that are even tighter than that, because these days, people are afraid of ransomware. They're afraid of people stealing research data, holding it hostage, that kind of thing. And this is a kind of environment which allows you to give that flexibility in the cloud with having control over all of that.
Yeah,
The
right.
fact that it runs within an AWS account, it means that you own it. You see it. You can look at every single thing. You can have that audited internally, externally, whatever way you want. And that's particularly important as well. So this is not software as a service. You're never sending your data off to anyone. You have it, and you own that, all of this in your account. So that's
Yep.
a critical piece as well to maintaining HIPAA compliance.
Right. And on the commercial side, it also means the customers are free to actually go and do their own procurement arrangements with AWS.
Yep.
And then RONIN essentially acts as a framework that bolts around that and then enforces the security policy and keeps it all in play as they go on through the consumption of all of that, right?
Exactly. So, and
Cool.
I should point out too that this infrastructure, as you can see here with the one AWS account connecting to on-premise resources, it's extensible. So all of the it's meant to work with all of the other AWS tools that you are familiar with, that you might be using for, like CloudWatch to monitor, set alerts, or Macy to look for PHI that might be in a place it shouldn't be. All of those kinds of tools are completely compatible given this architecture.
That's really neat. Okay, that makes sense. So who's gonna use this? Who are going to be the primary customers for this kind of thing?
The primary customers, I would imagine, because I come from a research world, I'm thinking about academic medical centers in particular. I'm thinking about researchers who don't have easy access to high performance computing, but they could use it. And so this is the kind of tool that would really make amazing things possible really quickly, being able to spin up a cluster as large as you need to access your genomic samples, your neuroimaging brains, whatever you've got. That sort of thing is you can't just go to your cluster and have compliance and be the only user of that cluster. That just doesn't work. So which brings me to the point, I should talk a little bit about what the isolate means in this architecture.
Yeah, how does that work?
Yeah, because that's another really important core point to this particular product. So there's many layers of isolation, both in RONIN Core and in Isolate. And so if you look here, you can see that within the architecture, every project falls within its own subnet. And in fact, every cluster also falls within its own subnet. So, and these subnets are isolated from each other by networking rules. So there's no way, if there was some malware that occurred within this project, because you allow a researcher to install what they want, but if something happens that's bad there, that cannot jump over to the cluster of other projects or other projects. It's limited to that project. So the blast radius is very, very tightly controlled. So without even going through the audit trails, you'll know, if something goes wrong within a project, you can just shut down the project and you're not going to hurt anything else in there, which is also pretty important because everybody's working within the account, but you've got this very well orchestrated network isolation, which is far too laborious to do in most people would not do this by hand. The only way you could really do this would be very labor intensive to do it by hand. The only way you can do it is to orchestrate it. And then I also want to point out this part here, which is the Secure Enclave. And this is the novel feature of Isolate, which is that we had customers asking for tighter control over who gets to use the RONIN assets and not. So they wanted to be able to secure the access to RONIN from a set of machines that they own effectively and manage, so using their corporate software and policies and management structure. So this is what the Secure Enclave is. It's a set of machines that the corporation controls, and it is only through those machines that you can get to any of the RONIN assets. And so that allows you to monitor very tightly what goes in and out of the system, even to the point of cut and paste. It can be Amazon workspaces, and that is a recommended approach if you don't have something else in place, or if you bring your own Secure Enclave technology because you've worked out a way that you like to have machines connected to your network using AWS. That is also possible. So we have a variety of different possibilities for how that can be architected, and we'll work with you to do that.
This is really cool. So where do people go to get more information about this?
Well, we're launching Isolate this week, maybe, if people are watching. And so I would suggest please go visit us at ronin.cloud. And there is a contact email there. You could send us email, and we would be happy to talk with you about how either RONIN Core or RONIN Isolate would meet your security needs, and go from there.
All right. And for everybody else out there, if you've got ideas about topics that you want to see us cover on future Tech Shorts, our DMs are open on Twitter. Find us at TechHPC. Give us some ideas for future topics, and we'll be sure to get them into the queue. Anyway.